everyone, welcome to this workshop where I'm going to talk about graphotherapy journaling. This is our anti-anxiety workshop. Now, no matter where you begin, and I know some of you are regular and you have been on this journey for all these days when we are moving towards different areas, we are looking at different demons, we are solving all the problems, and some of you are really new and as new as starting today. So if you're starting today and if that is the journey that you're making, absolutely no problem. The workshop is designed in a manner that you take one step at a time, which means you begin today, and as you move forward you will see that you will listen to this conversation and let this conversation stay with you. Then go and learn the stroke, which is a flow of thought stroke, which we also call the connecting stroke, the patience driven stroke, SS stroke, with multiple names. So whichever thing you want to call it, I stick to flow of thoughts as a stroke. Now you practice that for one page. Then you write the question I'm going to ask today and write that question there and respond to it. You know, responding is a process where you literally take everything that is coming from your heart, everything that you feel like, and you write all of that on the paper. Right? Now that is the process we're going to follow, and I'm going to answer all the questions that you have with us at the end of this conversation. So let me set the context and I will get to your questions immediately at the end of this. Not immediately, but at the end of this conversation. So what we are talking about? We're talking about journaling that is done as a 3-step process. Listen to the concept. Let me stir the pot. And those who are regular here and who have heard this conversation before and my explanation before, even for you guys, this is the point, to stir the pot. Everywhere that you felt the question remained with you, it stayed with you. So somebody asked me a question, Aditi, when I hear your conversation and I get stirred in that whole process, am I supposed to spend an entire day simmering into the juices of this conversation, or should I be picking it up and writing immediately and getting it out of my head? Because not every question is as simple where I can get done with it. Some questions stay, and they stay so strong and they stay deep, and it's not fun to kind of, think about all those issues. So I have 2-part response to that. First part, if I ask a question, then no matter whether you answer it today or if you answer it 3 days down the line, 5 days down the line, if you have some issue that is unresolved, this question will remain with you. And if you do justice to this process, and if you're willing to look at it for what it is, then definitely we will be able to move forward much faster. Which means carrying a bacterial infection in your body is not a great idea, isn't it? You don't want to carry that infection everywhere you go. No matter how difficult the treatment may sound, you might as well get done with it. But second part of this answer is, some people love their stories. If something gets triggered and you think, oh my god, someone had behaved with me in that particular manner, you keep repeating the story to yourself, not to anyone else, but you sit there and you go like, oh, but that had happened and that person was mean and she said that, and how could he behave like this? Now literally that emotion, that trigger, that process, so many times we keep repeating, and for some reason we love to simmer in the sob story of it. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to let the sob story take over. So if you're realizing that you are, and it's difficult, it's very difficult to know it on your own whether you are indulging or you're really feeling that emotions, it's not very easy, not the easiest thing to do. But if at any moment you catch hold of yourself doing that, guys, then that is the time for you to make that shift, to make that change, to say, okay, I'm going to do the journaling, and when I journal, let me make a mental note of it. If it is significant enough, it will come back to journaling. If it is not, then it may not. Okay, so how long to journal? Literally set out 10 or maximum 20 minutes to respond to the question. Okay, maximum 30. Okay, if some people really love to write and they have so much to write about, 30. No negotiation after that, nothing more than 30 minutes. If you have so much to write and you believe that, oh my god, this is like, like unstoppable, take a break after 30 minutes. Because if it is relevant, it will come back. But do not simmer in the same stories again and again. Now, the way we know journaling or keeping a diary is told or taught to us as a descriptive process. What do I mean? You take a thought and you start describing what happened. Most of the time you go in the details and you speak about, when that person walked towards me, I felt uncomfortable and these were my challenges. When you speak about different areas and you describe how helpless you felt, you start describing the emotions, the challenges. Many a times when we stay descriptive, when we keep narrating an experience, remember the example I gave where I spoke about if you bite into a lemon, like imagine right now, imagine holding a lemon in your hand, a nice, ripe, juicy lemon. You go to your kitchen, you keep it on your chopping board, you make sure that you get your favorite knife and you cut it. It's the juicy lemon, so it has a fresh smell, very, very refreshing. Now, unlike you pick it up and squeeze it in your mouth. As I describe it, some of you might feel the saliva, you salivating in this moment. There is no lemon, there is no real experience. But for your body, a memory or imagination of something is as good as a real experience. So when we do descriptive journaling, this is where the challenge takes place, because descriptive journaling is about describing a moment, going and repeating the experience to yourself. And it is risky because when you keep repeating the same experience, for your mind it is a familiar space. It is what you have done for your life and it loves repeating your own story. Now I'm going to speak about story a lot more in today's conversation, but let me just hook into this concept of repeating a story. If a story is repeated, no matter whether the story is real, whether the story is significant, whether the story actually has any basis of fact, if the story is repeated and if you believe in that story, it creates the same impact. And I mean it. It creates the same impact. If you don't believe, just think about one memory from your childhood. One memory where you were extremely happy. Like your fond memory of your grandmother, grandfather, something that happened, and as you speak about it, let us give it a moment. So as you speak about it, you'll realize that in those memories, whatever you experience, only thinking about it brings similar experiences or emotions back to you. Which means as you remember that moment, you walk into that moment and you relive that moment. This could be, and childhood memories are unadulterated, so they remain the way they were when we were growing up. As we become adults, so-called, and we start understanding things better, we mostly mess them up. And this quarantine couldn't have been a better example of this statement. So we literally step into these areas and we start coloring our memories as adults. But as kids, we are innocent and we absorb anything and everything that comes to us. And we love that real experience. That's why it stays longer in our memory. Now imagine something that was not that pleasant, that happened when you were a child. For your brain, there is no distinction between what was pleasant and what wasn't. If you remember something, if that memory still has a hold on you, then it still has a story and it still has a reaction. And that is exactly what we are trying to bring. So let's get to today's concept. Today's concept is one of the most powerful concepts that I have come across. I believe that everything that we do in our lives is based on the story that we are telling ourselves. Stories are powerful. People are lovely, they're amazing, relationships are great, but at the end, they become part of a narrative that is your narrative. A story that is your story. The way you have woven the story, the way you have created the characters, the way you have indulged in those characters, all of that is part of the story. So the story that you pick, the story that you narrate, the story that you indulged in, the story that you feel affected by is your story, and whether you like it or not, you have a great control over that story. Which means, now when people come and speak with me, most of the time, they expect the sessions to be like a counseling session, where they expect that they're going to come and they're going to speak and they're going to tell how things are difficult, how things are not working, and they expect me to hear them out. And as I hear them, they also expect me to build my understanding of their life or their situation based on their story, right? Now the problem with me is only this: when people bring in this conversation, I have a tool of handwriting, which means I look at their writing and I also have an objective perspective. What does that mean? That when people are saying how helpless they felt or how weak they were, and if I look at the handwriting and I say, but this person has a very strong opinion of himself, did he really feel helpless? I don't see that happening. So I would not deny your story. I would not deny that person's story, but I would look for a moment to probe further. Now this is what I want all of you to do, and doing it to ourselves is slightly challenging but possible. If you dare to, if you're willing to, if you are keen to implement this tool, then it is one of the most effective tools that we can jump into. Why do I say that? I say that because when we pick up our narrative, we believe it is a flawless narrative. If I'm telling this to you, it must be true. No, it just means it is your perspective. It is how you looked at that situation. It only means how you felt in that moment, how active you felt, how stuck you felt, and that emotional experience has nothing to do with what exactly happened. How when we were really young, like in our, say, kindergarten, great example, first day of school felt like this big problem. Many of us cried and many of us didn't want to leave our parents, and we really wanted to be at home. We didn't know this unfamiliar area, and we did all the drama, basically. Now, if you as an adult looked at that situation, you felt only some sort of sympathy and you said, oh, how sweet is that, you don't want to go to school. That's it. We did not pay any attention, we did not buy into the story, because as an adult, you understand what the child is going through. And no matter how big this problem was for all of us, for our parents, it was the tiniest problem, isn't it? Now, as an adult, it's the same thing, but applied differently. What do I mean? As an adult, when I think my problem is the biggest problem, it's the most difficult situation, I cannot handle it and I feel so anxious that it gets to me. Now, what am I actually doing? Like that kindergartner, I'm looking at the situation as the biggest situation on my hand. And when I look at that situation and I try to look at it from my perspective, let me rephrase, from my limited perspective as a kindergartner, the small situation of going to the school for the first time feels like this big problem, because my story as a kindergartner, and I'm repeating this, is, oh my God, I'm leaving my familiar home and I'm stepping into something that is so new and so challenging, and I don't know anybody there. I feel helpless about it. But that is not the reality. The reality is much different. The reality is at times can be found only when we look at our story from a distance. I was told the story initially when I was doing my training as a counselor, and I really loved the story. I've been using the story ever since. Imagine you are in a museum and there is a beautiful painting made by Rabindranath Tagore, old painting, beautiful painting. And there is a fly in the museum. And the fly flies around and then goes and sits on this painting. When she sits on this painting, she feels all the dust, that old color, the dirty smell. She's uncomfortable. She's like, oh my god, this is disgusting. What is this place? Like, why everything is like so damp and it's not fun to be here. Now imagine somebody holds this fly and pulls her behind at a distance from the painting and gives her human brain, that brain which can also appreciate art, and then the same fly looks at this painting. Now instead of feeling completely disgusted by it, suddenly the fly looks at it and says, oh my god, this is a masterpiece. This is so beautiful. But the same fly, when she was too close to the painting, when all the dust was all over her, she hated the same experience. Oh, so was it about the experience? Was it about the fly? Or it was merely about the perspective? Perspective about how far or how close are you from the story that you're narrating, the story that you're telling yourself about the situation that you're experiencing right now. So the story is a very, very important part. And whether we like it or not, nobody can take away your story from you and nobody can give you your story. Your story is self-scripted, which means basically you are the protagonist, you are the hero or the heroine of your story, and you'll make sure that it is written and it is directed and it is scripted from your angle. You got it. So if the story is created from your angle, there is no scope for someone else to intervene and even show you a different perspective if you are not asking a question. Now I'm saying, what if we keep this process even closer? I'm saying, why don't I give you the tools to ask yourself a question? And when you ask that question to yourself, and if you are the writer of the story, you look at this character and you say, oh, in Kalpana's story this is happening. And if Kalpana behaves like this, these are the parts. And if she looks at it, so literally when you start seeing the discrepancies, the gaps in your own story, you'll realize that there is a mistake here and you are kind of holding on to it way too personally than what it should be. Like that fly. When you're too close to the painting, it is all uncomfortable. When you are a few feet away from it, it becomes really, really beautiful. Or, I'm not saying every painting and every story will become beautiful, but at least you'll have some objectivity, which means you look at it and you look at it for what it is instead of only thinking of it as some dusty space. Okay, so the question for today is simple. Today's question is, what story am I narrating about my life right now? So literally walk through the stories that you have been telling other people. Oh my god, this is so tough. Story. You know, if it were not for me, nobody would have been able to deal with this situation. Story. No matter what happens, I won't give up. Story. Because it may sound positive, it may sound negative, but whatever narration that you bring, and how to know what narration you are picking up, your story feels real. It is like the story that comes from your gut, the story that you have the willingness to write, but you have never thought about. You never considered that it is your choice to write the story. You looked at it and you thought, oh, probably I'm just going through my life and this is how I speak with myself. Now, as a coach, I have, when you study different psychological models, one of the things I've learned in multiple models is the importance of your inner dialogue. What do I mean by that? Inner dialogue. This is a sign for it. I'm not kidding you. This is a sign for it. When you speak with yourself, that inner dialogue, when you're speaking and when you're constantly giving certain signals and messages, that conversation is one of the most powerful conversations you can have. It is not the conversation with your neighbor, it is not the conversation with your best friend, it is not the conversation with anybody significant in your life. But it is a conversation with yourself that actually is 50 times more powerful than any word that comes out of your mouth. So the question is, what inner dialogue are you having? And that inner dialogue is the narration of the story. is the narrator. He or she is constantly telling you not what is happening, but what is your experience about what is happening. So there are some people who would look at things and they look at it and they say, oh my god, I have a crisis and I have to fix the problem. There are some people who say, oh my god, I have a crisis, I don't know what to do, I cannot function. Now it is not about the crisis. It's not the situation that presented itself. It's about what the narrator thought about the situation that presented itself. And this is where the whole challenge happens. So give yourself maximum 30 minutes. Pick up some points and narrate the story. Now if you have 30 minutes to capture the story that you're narrating to everybody, and I'm saying right now, the word right now in every question is an operative word. Because I don't want you to go back and talk about you who was 5 years older. You might have seen that post, right? What would you tell your 20-year-old self? We don't want to know what that 20-year-old self did. We just want to know what are you experiencing right now. Many a times I feel, people believe that all your patterns, all your thoughts come from the past and they have roots, and that's true. And I'm not denying that they have roots and they have come because of your conditioning or someone else's conditioning and belief system. I agree, and I'm not denying the fact. But at the same time, the very moment I believe that my conditioning is because of someone else's, and now unless and until I don't go and deal with that moment in time, I have no control over the situation. The thought, to my mind, is very, very challenging. I'm not saying it's incorrect, but I feel it is very, very challenging. Another approach to look at the same scenario is I say, wait a minute, this is what is happening in my life, in my situation, in my marriage, in my business right now. Now, if I have a snake in my house right now, it doesn't matter where the snake came from. All I care for is what do I require to do now to protect the people in my house and to make sure that the snake disappears. That's it, right? I don't have to go and identify exactly where the snake came from, what was the situation, what would have happened for me to solve my current problem. And that is an important part. Most of the time when you start describing a situation and a story from the past self of yours, you remain stuck there. Now, unstucking you, removing you from that muddled space is a very, very difficult job, because that is your doing and the past doesn't exist, right? When we go back and think about that one moment and make it so significant, then there is no other way other people can release us of our pain. But what can we do? We can ask the question about the situation right now, in this moment. If you stick to right now as an operative word, then you are speaking to your current age, your current personality, your current self. And this self is not limited by your 20-year-old self's idea, and also this self is not driven by the problem that your 70-year-old self will have, which means this self is right now here looking at the situation for what it is. And if you are willing to look at that story, the story that you are currently telling in last maybe 3 months, and maybe the story that you're telling about next 3 months, only in that period, only these 6 months are allowed. 3 months prior to this moment and 3 months after this moment. If that is what you stick to, you will see so much will open up and so much will be more available to you for you to look at what story are you narrating. Some people tell the stories of being a victim. Some people tell the stories of being the achiever. Some people tell the stories of being somebody who has figured it out. Some people tell the stories of someone who is always unlucky. Have you heard those stories from people? And if you have, you know what I'm saying. And these stories become the underlining scripts for our future stories, because stories are powerful and stories can move us emotionally. And if you have this emotional narration where you have some idea. So am I a lucky person? Am I an unlucky person? Whatever is your story, there's no right or wrong to it. But it is important that you know what your story is, because without knowing the story and you keep on repeating it, you don't know what you're doing exactly. That is the idea. Now over to you guys. Open to questions. I'm going to go back and check the previous question, and by then you guys write your questions and we'll take it from there. So Vikas was asking if I keep changing my handwriting all the time, then what type of person am I? Oh. So when people think that they're changing handwritings all the time, they think that their handwriting is changing completely and it is not identical to the previous script. For a graphologist, it's like a blood report. So when I look at your handwriting has three parts. First, that is always changing, like the expressions. They're changing as per what you're speaking and the context of the conversation. Then there is your skin, which changes as you age. So it is changing, but it is way slower and it will take some time for it to actually change or for it to feel different. And then there are your structural things like your bone structure. It would not change. You may go fat, you may go thin, but the bone structure will remain the way it is. Now handwriting also has the same three areas. Some things that keep changing every now and then, and these are your mood factors. So we look at them and we say, okay, you do have mood swings, but all of us do, so it doesn't matter. Now if somebody's handwriting, which is to be changed over the years, changes in months or in every script, then I would look at it as handwriting changes. But I have rarely come across people whose original script changes. People do go through a lot of changes on mood level, and that's what you look at. Handwriting becomes smaller, bigger, it moves, slant moves, but those semi-middle areas, like your skin, those areas would not change immediately. And the last part, the fixed parts, they're so innate that I have seen people using it for 40-50 years, and their handwriting, those innate parts like your bone structures would not change at all. Okay, so what you think is changing handwriting is not necessarily the same thing for a doctor when he looks at your blood sample. You may think it's different, but for your doctor the report does not change much. So the same thing happens. And even if you don't write, many times people say, okay, I haven't written in 10 years. Or even yesterday on one of the Insta Live, I got this question where somebody asked me, but what about the people who do not write at all? How do you talk about their personalities? So if you are somebody who has written after many years, then what are we saying? Your handwriting is your innate skill. It was there for 12 years when you went to school, and at least for this generation who's on Instagram knows how to write. I don't know about the next generation which starts with like iPad when they're 0 or 1 year old, but I don't know about them. But for us, we have written, and when you have written something or used a skill for 12 years, it is an innate part of your personality. So when you write, you may struggle for 2 lines like swimming or cycling, skills that you know, but you cannot swim immediately if you haven't done it for many years. But once you get a hang of it, then your natural tendency takes over. Those people who do not write at all, how about their personalities? So handwritings don't build personalities, they represent personalities. And if you have handwriting as your used skill, or if you have any coordination between your brain and your hand and your finger movements, then it doesn't matter whether you're writing or not, graphotherapy will still work. Okay? I answered this question multi-folds, as I do most of them. Okay? Manpreet is asking that this is my first session. My question is how to practice the S stroke. I don't know how to do it, and also have to send it to you afterwards. Yes. So Manpreet, first thing, after watching this video, if you haven't registered with us, then please do it. If you have already registered with us, then you would receive an email and in that email there are links available about the stroke to practice and about the journaling pages that you can make a print of and you can write on that. Once you get your stroke, send the day one, like send it to us, tag us so that we know exactly what you're doing, to make sure that you are not practicing a wrong stroke when it comes to the S practice. I'm so careful about this and I keep asking you guys to send it to us, because imagine the whole objective of this process is to reduce your anxiety, and in this process if you do the stroke wrong or incorrect, and if that enhances your anxiety, then we are being counterproductive. So one of the reasons why we are taking so much of care and asking you to send the handwriting sample, the S stroke sample, not handwriting but the practice sample, is just to make sure that you are doing the right practice, and that would lead to the results that we are talking about. Now, next question is, I think it's Rachana. Can I break down the narrative into different sections like work, career, money and relationship? Great question. Now, can you do that? Yes. Having said that, do not make too many sections, because you can speak about my hobby career and my real career and my this and my that. Don't make it too specific. Just get to the narrative of it, which means what am I trying to get through this process? I want you to get the emotion underneath your story. The emotion of, I'm a free person. I need space. I need a breather from the situation. I can't, like whatever is your narrative. And most of the time these emotions are 2 or 3 emotions. So we may think we have so many stories, but a great assignment would be that if you can connect to those 2 or 3 stories that flow underneath your narration. Okay, that emotion that if you can capture, because if you can find a pattern, as I always say, if you can look at a pattern, you can detect it, then you can break it, and that's what we are talking about here. Okay. Okay, so Manpreet, if you have registered, you will receive the mail. The next person, starring pigeons. Okay, I really enjoy your podcast. Thank you, and the work you do and the live sessions are helpful. Thank you so much. I'm so happy that you're enjoying it. Priya is asking, how are you able to decode timelines from handwriting? I'm curious. So Priya is referring to her personal feedback that happened in the short sessions that we are offering as a part of this module. And I think I gave specific feedback to her that 5 years ago something happened. So Priya, I think the credit of that goes to my dyslexia. The fact that I can read certain patterns beyond my own understanding. So that specific timeline part, which amuses many people, including myself. So every time when that accurate number I utter out, there is a pattern to follow. But at the same time, the pattern is not so specific and I haven't learned it. But I have gone through more than 10,000 handwriting samples in last 16 years. So when you keep doing one thing over and over again, a part of you also develops that, I think, artistic eye. So this one part of graphology is very, very mathematical. So you look at it and there are numbers and there are millimeters and the pressure, and it is very, very mathematical. That's the only word I can think about. I can't say scientific, but it's mathematical. And then other part is completely artistic. So I feel through the help of this data that I received from your handwriting sample, the other story happens where the poetry opens up. I feel every single person is this complex poem, and those who do not connect to art or poetry can read these words and to them it would not mean anything. And then there are others who read the same line and they just can stay with that line for days together because they can connect to the overall experience of the process and what it triggers in them, right? And what all it brings out. So I feel for me handwriting is a combination of that math and this artistic expression where we both, anytime I look at a handwriting sample, we both are constantly dancing. So it is not only me narrating and me telling you do this, don't do this, and you might have seen that in that quick 15 minutes thing also, that we are dancing. So you ask me a question, and it is something that comes in the moment for your benefit, and not, it's literally like the whole idea is that you receive that one point that can just go to the core of your anxiety and release it. Now, I believe anybody, if you have that level of involvement and commitment, all of us find our ways of hacking the same system of complexity. So to me, that is handwriting. So that is that. Bhumika is asking, yes, I'm amused. That amused you too? Yeah, thank you. I feel amused at times. So sometimes you'll end up saying something to other person, and then a part of you, because sometimes I speak about emotional complications in a specific way, and you say exactly the point, and this is what I wanted to hear. And let me tell you, so many times that is exactly whatever I utter is exactly what I require to hear. So I keep saying that I'm so grateful for you guys to be here, because this process is always a two-way process. So whatever questions you bring in, it's not only about me answering the question, but me also receiving the answer for myself and for so many other people who are on the call. So you might have seen this, you're like, oh, I needed to hear exactly this. I've heard this feedback in last 16 days so many times. I needed to hear exactly these words, and the timing couldn't have been better. Now this happens because of the collective creation that we are doing. Both of us are into it together, and I can't be more grateful than this. I'm so happy. Actually, I can be more grateful always. Thank you, Priya. Thank you so much. So guys, this is today's conversation, and tomorrow at 4 o'clock we're gonna join again, and I'm gonna speak about a new question. If it is your day one, do not rush into doing too many days, and do not rush into covering up too many days. Do today's work and stick to it. There's no need to jump in and complicate the process. Go with this flow, and now from here onwards the conversation will also become more interesting and intense. So take one day at a time. If you feel like, if you think you can, then only take one extra day. So do day 16 and day 1, and then do 17 and day 2 if you feel like. If not, then go straight, start from here, finish till day 21, and then come back and do from day 1 to day 15. As simple as that. Stick to your handwriting practice. I'm going to tell you how one can continue this process even after this workshop, and let's see what all we can do. And I have some news to tell you, which I'll tell you tomorrow or day after, once we release the work that we are doing. At this point in time, we are still in the edit process of some videos we are making for some fancy people. So we will tell you once that is out. And thank you so much for joining in again. See you tomorrow at 4 p.m. exactly in the same channel. Bye guys.